It's just a city, barely over 1 square kilometer in size. And yet, humanity has bled for it, again and again, across the ages. Jerusalem, a name that echoes through prayers, through wars, through time itself. The holiest of places, the most fiercely contested on earth. A city where people have chosen to die simply for what they believe. But why? Why does this small patch of land draw the hearts of billions? Why do the world's 3 largest religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, all call it sacred? Why has it been the target of more than 40 empires? Why has it been conquered, destroyed, rebuilt, and reclaimed for over 5,000 years? Jerusalem is not just a place. It is a dream, a symbol of peace, of divine promise, and of eternal life. Today we begin a journey across 5 millennia to uncover the secrets, the power, and the enduring desire that has made Jerusalem the most wanted city in human history. Why is a city smaller than 1 square kilometer considered sacred by over half of the world's population? Why Jerusalem and not Rome, Mecca, or Varanasi is seen as the place where humanity can touch the divine? 1. The legendary beginning, a hill, a promise, a living spring. Imagine yourself standing on a land of rocks and dust. The wind sweeps across the barren hills. There is nothing here that speaks of power or glory. And yet, nearly 4,000 years ago, on this very ground, then known as Jebus, an event unfolded that would shape human history. Abraham, a nomad from Mesopotamia, was called by God to leave his homeland and journey to the promised land. There, on a hill that would later be called Mount Moriah, he was put to the ultimate test. Offer your son, Isaac, as a sacrifice to me. Abraham obeyed. But as he raised the knife, God spoke and stopped him. That moment, whether symbolic or historical, left an indelible mark on the spiritual memory of humankind. This is the place where God tested human faithfulness. This is where the covenant between man and the divine began. And that is why Mount Moriah, the very heart of today's Jerusalem, became the center of Jewish faith. From that moment on, tradition called this place the Gate of Heaven, where earth touches heaven. 2. David, Solomon, and the Temple of God on Earth. Around 1000 BCE, King David, the legendary warrior poet of the Bible, defeated the Jebusites and made Jerusalem the permanent capital of Israel. It was not by accident. David believed this was the place chosen by God. But it was his son Solomon who transformed Jerusalem into the spiritual center of the nation. How? By building the first temple, a magnificent, majestic structure where God would dwell among his people. The Jews believed that in the Holy of Holies, the innermost chamber of the temple, the presence of God truly resided. No one was allowed to enter, except the high priest, and only once a year. For Judaism, Jerusalem is not just a place, it is the heart of the covenant, the center of the universe, the place where the soul of a nation converges. Even after destruction, even in exile, even in diaspora, the Jewish people never forgot Jerusalem. At weddings, they still say, "If I forget you, O Jerusalem, may my right hand lose its strength." 3. Christianity. From death to eternal life. Jerusalem, 1st century. In a land under Roman rule, where the Jewish people longed for a Messiah, a young man named Jesus from the rural hills of Galilee arrived in the holy city. He came with no weapons. He spoke of no kingdom of earthly power. Instead, he preached love for enemies, forgiveness for those who hurt us, and that the kingdom of heaven is within. During the time of Passover, he entered Jerusalem with his disciples. Crowds cheered. They waved palm branches as if welcoming a king. But not long after, he was betrayed, arrested, brought before the Jewish council, then handed over to the Roman authorities. On a hill called Golgotha, he was crucified, one of the most painful and shameful forms of execution in the ancient world. And yet, something mysterious happened. 3 days later, his tomb was empty. His disciples claimed they had seen him, alive, flesh and blood. And from that moment, faith in the resurrection spread like fire in the wind. It was right here in Jerusalem that Christianity was not only born, but born out of the deepest human suffering and the greatest hope of mankind. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre, built on the site where Jesus was crucified and resurrected, has become one of the most sacred pilgrimage sites in Christianity for over 2,000 years. Jerusalem, where the Son of God died, and where he rose again to open the gates of salvation for the entire world. From the stone pathways around Golgotha, Christianity spread to Rome, to Europe, and across continents, becoming one of the three great faiths in human history, all beginning in Jerusalem. 4. Islam, the night journey and the third holiest sanctuary. In the year 621 CE, the Prophet Muhammad experienced a mystical night, described in the Quran as the Isra and Miraj. According to tradition, the angel Gabriel, brought Muhammad from Mecca to a place called Al-Masjid al-Aqsa, meaning the faraway mosque. From there, he ascended through the heavens, meeting prophets like Abraham, Moses, Jesus, until he stood in the presence of Allah. It was there, Muslims believe, that Muhammad received the command to pray 5 times a day, a sacred duty that continues to this day. And that faraway mosque is Jerusalem. Right on Mount Moriah, where the Jewish temple once stood, Muslims built the Dome of the Rock, one of the most stunning Islamic monuments in the world. Not only a wonder of architecture with its golden dome, but a symbol of the divine journey where heaven and earth met once again. Next to it stands Al-Aqsa Mosque, closely tied to Muhammad's night journey, and now the third holiest site in Islam, after Mecca and Medina. And here's something amazing. Islam does not reject Abraham, Moses, or Jesus. On the contrary, they are honored as great prophets in the same spiritual lineage, which is why Jerusalem is not just sacred to Islam alone, but a shared symbol of faith that traces back to Abraham himself. For more than 13 centuries, Muslims have prayed toward Jerusalem, made pilgrimage to it, and held it as a deep part of their spiritual and cultural identity across the world. Why does one city mean so much to all three faiths? Because they all believe that here in Jerusalem, heaven and earth once touched, a king chosen by God, a savior crucified, then risen, a prophet lifted into the heavens. Jerusalem does not belong to one alone, but all believe it is the place where the sacred began and perhaps where it may end. Jerusalem. Why has this city been fought over more than 40 times in history? Jerusalem, the holy city of the world's 3 major religions, a city with no vast resources, no coastline, no oil, no gold. So why has it become a never-ending battlefield for power, faith, and the very survival of civilizations? Over 40 times it changed hands, hundreds of thousands dead. We now enter a journey not just through history, but through blood, tears, and unyielding struggle. Let's begin with the question at the heart of it all. Why has Jerusalem been so fiercely contested? 1. Jerusalem, the crossroads of 3 continents. It comes as no surprise that Jerusalem sits right at the intersection of 3 continents: Asia, Europe, and Africa. This is one of the most important trade and military routes in human history. Jerusalem lies on the ideal route connecting the Middle East to Europe and Africa, a place of strategic power, a geographic stronghold for ancient empires. Any empire that wished to reach the Mediterranean Sea or to expand its influence across surrounding regions had to control Jerusalem. Can you imagine? Jerusalem was the center of commerce, the heart of faith, and the place that could determine the strength of an entire empire. To the ancient era, surrounded by Babylon and Rome, in 586 BC, the mighty king Nebuchadnezzar II of Babylon unleashed his army upon Jerusalem. After months of relentless siege, the walls crumbled, the gates fell, and the city, once vibrant, once sacred, was utterly destroyed. The streets were silent, filled only with the sound of collapse and fire. The first temple, center of worship, pride of a nation, was reduced to ashes and dust. This was not just the fall of stone and timber. It was the collapse of a nation's identity. The Jewish people were torn from their homeland, dragged into exile in Babylon, and so began one of the greatest tragedies in their collective memory. Imagine standing amidst the ruins, where once prayers echoed, now stood only charred remnants of faith. Families separated, hope scattered like the broken stones of the temple itself. Yet, even in exile, they carried Jerusalem within their hearts. But Jerusalem's story did not end there. When Babylon fell to the Persian Empire, the great ruler Cyrus the Great did the unthinkable. He let the exiled return home. And return they did. With tears in their eyes and determination in their hearts, they rebuilt what was lost. Stone by stone, memory by memory, the Second Temple rose again. This was not merely reconstruction, it was resurrection. A powerful symbol of faith revived, of culture restored. Jerusalem once again became a beacon, a spiritual flame for an entire people. Yet history never rests. In 332 BC, Alexander the Great marched into the city. With him came the wave of Hellenistic culture, philosophy, architecture, art, and language. Jerusalem became a melting pot of civilizations, a vibrant crossroads where East met West. But with foreign ideas came religious tension. Greek customs clashed with deep-rooted Jewish beliefs. The spiritual fabric of the city began to fray. By 63 BC, Rome had arrived. The Roman Empire, hungry for dominance, seized Jerusalem, and the city once again became a battlefield. But this time, not just of armies, it became a struggle of identity, a fight between empire and faith, between power and spirit. Jerusalem was no longer just a place on the map. It was the soul of a people and the prize of empires. 3. Rebellion and the destruction of the temple. In 66 CE, the Jews rose up against the Roman Empire. The city was besieged for the first time. This was a rebellion that the Roman Empire could not let pass unpunished. They saw this uprising not just as a revolt, but as a direct challenge to their rule over the region. The siege lasted for months, and in 70 CE, under General Titus, the Roman army laid siege to Jerusalem. After a brutal battle, they crushed the city. The Second Temple, a sacred symbol of Jewish faith, was completely destroyed. An estimated 1 million Jews were killed in this conflict. Thousands more were enslaved. Josephus, a Jewish historian who survived the destruction, wrote, "Blood flowed like rivers. Corpses piled up in the streets. It was a scene of devastation, a final blow to the ancient world of Jerusalem." From that moment, Jerusalem was left in ruins. The city was not only physically destroyed, but was also erased from the map of those who refused to bow to Roman power. Jerusalem was no longer just a battlefield. It was a symbol of defiance, of the spirit's unyielding in the face of conquest. 4. Christianity, the faith that changed the world from Jerusalem. After the destruction of the temple, Jerusalem could not escape the deep sorrow of its loss. But it was from these ruins that a new faith emerged, Christianity. In the first century, Jesus Christ lived and taught in this very city. He came not as a warrior king, but as a savior, the Messiah that the Jews had been waiting for. It was here, at Golgotha, that Jesus was crucified, and from his death, the hope of resurrection turned Jerusalem into a holy land for Christians worldwide. After Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection, Christianity began to spread, not just as a small faith, but as a spiritual revolution that changed the world. Emperor Constantine converted to Christianity, and his mother, Helena, sought and identified the place where Jesus had been crucified. On that very spot, she built the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, marking Jerusalem as the most sacred place for all Christians. Jerusalem was renewed once again, becoming a pilgrimage site for Christians. Every year, millions of pilgrims from all over the world flock to the city, not only to commemorate the pivotal events of Christianity, but also to worship and find spiritual inspiration. 5. The rise of Islam and a new conquest. After the rise of Islam, Muhammad and his followers conquered Jerusalem in 637 CE. This marked a major turning point in the history of the city, as Islam not only entered Jerusalem but also left a deep mark on the soul of the city. Jerusalem became the third holiest site in Islam after Mecca and Medina, with the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque, the place where Muhammad is believed to have ascended to the heavens during the Isra and Miraj. This is not just a religious story, but a spiritual symbol, deeply ingrained in one of the world's major religions. The conquest of Jerusalem marked a critical milestone in the city's history, as Islam became an integral part of Jerusalem's history. Jerusalem was not only a sacred city for Jews and Christians, but it also became an undisputed holy land for all three great faiths. It is a city that each religion considers an inseparable part of its heritage and faith, creating a religious harmony that is both remarkable and challenging. 6. The Crusades, the bloody history of Jerusalem. The conflict between Christianity and Islam officially began in 1099, when the Crusaders from Europe came to liberate the Holy Land. These crusades were not only religious wars, but also bloody conquests. The Crusaders besieged, attacked, and massacred Muslims and Jews in the city without mercy. William of Tyre, a European historian, described the scene. Blood flowed like rivers, corpses piled up in the streets. Jerusalem was taken by the Christians, but their rule didn't last long. Just 88 years later, in 1187, Saladin's Muslim forces recaptured Jerusalem after their decisive victory at the Battle of Hattin. Saladin not only reclaimed the city, but also liberated it from Christian control. This victory was not only a military triumph, but also a religious victory, as Islam once again restored its presence in Jerusalem, a city that had witnessed numerous battles and tragedies throughout its history. This event further highlighted the struggle for control of this sacred city, not just between empires, but also between religious beliefs, making Jerusalem not only a battleground for empires, but also a place where faiths collide and challenge each other. 7. The Ottomans and the quiet peace that lasted. In 1517, the Ottoman Empire took Jerusalem and controlled it for over 400 years. This was a relatively peaceful period during which the city did not face large-scale wars. However, the constant changes in the world outside and within the empire gradually altered Jerusalem's role in the global scene. Under the reign of Suleiman the Magnificent, one of the greatest Ottoman rulers, the walls of Jerusalem were rebuilt and reinforced, protecting the city from external threats. The Ottoman rule brought a long-lasting stability to Jerusalem, allowing the city to recover from the upheavals of earlier wars. Yet, despite the lack of major wars, by the 19th century, Jerusalem began to lose its political influence. The rise of Western empires, the shift in global politics, and the decline of the Ottoman Empire gradually made Jerusalem less significant in the geopolitical landscape. Instead, the city became more of a cultural and religious crossroads, as Western powers began to focus more on the region, and the Ottoman grip on the city began to weaken. Why has Jerusalem been fought over more than 40 times in history? Because this city is not just home to temples, it holds the soul and hope of billions of people. Jerusalem is where empires sought to hold the ultimate power. Jerusalem is where religions battled to claim the presence of God. That is why no one can abandon Jerusalem. It is the center of everything humankind believes in. Jerusalem has endured countless wars, countless conquests. But by the 20th century, why did it become a fiery cauldron where nothing ever calms down? Who controls this city now? And can the Israel-Palestine conflict in Jerusalem ever end? 1. The 20th century, the shifting of the world and the emergence of the Israel-Palestine conflict. After World War I, the Ottoman Empire weakened, and the British took control of Palestine under the Mandate of Palestine, a League of Nations mandate. This period marked a turning point, as it opened up a new era of political and social changes in the region. During this time, tensions between the Jewish and Arab communities in the region began to rise. These tensions were not just religious, but were also a struggle for power and land. Both sides sought control over the land that was historically significant to them. The first turning point for Jerusalem came with the rise of Zionism, a movement advocating for the re-establishment of a Jewish state in Palestine. Theodor Herzl and other Zionist leaders led the Jewish migration to Jerusalem, establishing new settlements. At the same time, the Palestinians, mostly Arabs, opposed the Jewish migration, fearing that Jerusalem and surrounding areas would be taken, resulting in the loss of their traditional land forever. This period saw tensions reaching new heights, as both communities struggled to protect their rights to the land. 2. The emergence of riots and religious warfare. In 1920, tensions between Jews and Arabs exploded when Zionist groups began establishing settlements in Jerusalem. Conflicts broke out in areas such as the Dome of the Rock, a holy site for Islam. These confrontations were not only about territorial control, but also about deep-seated religious beliefs tied to sacred spaces. In 1929, another round of riots occurred as Jewish and Islamic groups clashed over religious sites. The violence escalated, resulting in hundreds dead and thousands injured. The growing Jewish population and the Zionist pursuit of independence pushed tensions between the two communities to a peak. These riots were not just violent outbreaks, but signs of Jerusalem becoming a battlefield of faiths, where religious and territorial conflicts collided, impacting not only the city, but the broader region. 3. The departure of British colonial rule and the birth of the State of Israel. In 1947, the United Nations proposed a partition plan to divide Palestine into two states, one Jewish and one Arab. Jerusalem was to be internationalized, belonging to no nation. This was an attempt to resolve the long-standing conflict between the two communities, but it only resulted in further division. The partition plan failed to stop the conflict. Immediately after the creation of the State of Israel in 1948, the First Israeli-Arab War broke out, and Jerusalem was divided into two distinct parts. The western part of Jerusalem came under Israeli control. The eastern part, including the Old City and holy sites, came under Jordanian control. This division created a deep rift between the followers of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam in the city. It was not only a territorial division but also a spiritual and religious separation. Especially for Muslims and Christians, Jordan's control over the holy sites created a sense of loss and instability. This division would last for over 2 decades, making Jerusalem a symbol of disunity and unending conflict over control. 4. The 1967 Six-Day War. Jerusalem recaptured and became the sole capital of Israel. In 1967, during the Six-Day War, Israel defeated a coalition of Arab nations, including Egypt, Jordan, and Syria, and recovered all of Jerusalem, including the eastern part, which had been under Jordanian control. After their victory, Israel declared Jerusalem as its legitimate capital. This decision sparked strong opposition from Palestine and Arab nations. Jerusalem became not just a hotbed of conflict, but also a focal point of international political strife. The issue of Jerusalem's control became a core issue in peace negotiations and a reason for deep disagreements between Israel and Palestine, as well as other Arab nations in the region. After Israel took full control of the city, it began to strengthen its presence at the Jewish holy sites, while the holy sites of Islam and Christianity remained fiercely contested, especially the Dome of the Rock and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Jerusalem, with its changed borders, became the epicenter of religious and political conflict, not only in the Middle East but across the globe. 5. Jerusalem in the 21st century. Religious tensions and unrelenting conflict. Today, Jerusalem remains one of the most conflicted and tense places on earth. The Israel-Palestine conflict around Jerusalem is not only a military war, but also a battle of faith, culture, and the historical rights of each religion. Israel views Jerusalem as its eternal capital, where the Jewish historical legacy is honored, and the Western Wall, the holiest site for Jews, that stands as a symbol of faith. Palestine views Jerusalem as the future capital of the Palestinian state, always fighting to reclaim East Jerusalem, home to the Al-Aqsa Mosque and other holy sites. The religious war between Jews, Christians, and Muslims continues to rage around Golgotha, the Dome of the Rock, and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Jerusalem is not just a city, it is a symbol of the unending conflict over power, religion, and hope. The struggles here cannot be resolved merely through military means, but are deeply intertwined with the spiritual and cultural battles of faith and identity, where the beliefs and lives of billions of people are at stake. The city remains a spiritual battlefield where no religion is willing to concede its claim, making Jerusalem an ongoing testament to the power of belief. 6. Peace efforts and failed agreements. In 1993, the Oslo Accords were signed between Israel and Palestine, aiming for a peaceful solution. However, the peace process remains stalled even today. Historic meetings like the Camp David Accords or the Geneva Agreement have all failed to resolve the Jerusalem conflict. Why is that? Because Jerusalem is not just a city. Jerusalem is the heart of faith, the soul of 3 great religions. Jerusalem is a symbol of power and hope, where the existence of these religions intersects, where religious and political power are intertwined, creating a situation that cannot easily be resolved. This city is not just a place where nations fight for control, but where beliefs and cultural heritage are fiercely protected. No peace solution can be fully accepted unless it addresses the deep spiritual tensions involved. Jerusalem remains a symbol of belief, hope, and an unresolved struggle to achieve understanding and harmony between the world's religions and communities. 7. The future of Jerusalem. Is there hope for peace? Peace for Jerusalem is not simply a political matter. It is a matter of spirituality, religious freedom, and harmony between peoples. Throughout history, Jerusalem has endured countless conflicts, but beneath those struggles lies a yearning for lasting peace, a yearning that no one can truly abandon. For true peace to exist, Jerusalem must be a city for all people, regardless of ethnicity, religion, or nation. It must be a place where all faiths and cultures can coexist, respect each other, and live together in equality and harmony. Jerusalem, with all its sacredness and significance to three major religions, must become a symbol of peace. It can be a place where different beliefs no longer cause division, but offer an opportunity to build understanding. A place where each community can live together peacefully without the burden of discrimination or conflict. The future of Jerusalem does not depend solely on political solutions or peace agreements, but on the ability of its peoples and religions to accept differences, understand each other, and build a peaceful city together. In doing so, Jerusalem will not only be a city of faith and heritage, but a city of love, harmony, and hope for all of humanity. Will the conflict in Jerusalem ever end? And who controls this city? Certainly, Jerusalem remains the battlefield of faith, power, and political ambitions. And in a world where faith and power continue to compete, Jerusalem still stands as an unreplaceable monument to hopes, wounds, and faith that never fade. Jerusalem, the city of 5,000 years, a place where the past and present never stop intersecting. What will the future of this city be? Can mankind find peace, or will division remain? Jerusalem, the city that never finds peace.